Up in the air, it's a bird, it's a plane. No, it's the review for Superman 2, the Donner Cut. Hey everybody, welcome back to Almost Sideways, a place for movie conversation. And my name is Adam, and the conversation doesn't end after this video is over. It also is on an audio podcast, which you can find on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, and Pandora. So make sure you check the show notes down below for our podcast links. I am joined by three awesome guys who love Superman. Without further ado, let's introduce our guests. Some of them are returning, and we have a first-time guest today, too. And this is the reason why we're doing this episode is because of him. And this is Chandler Langley. Chandler, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. I just watched what we were supposed to talk about last night, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And where can we find you on YouTube and social media?
You can find me on Hot Takes for Nerds. It's a YouTube channel where I do mostly about unpopular opinions or hot takes. And I like being interactive with my followers on Instagram a good bit. I've been doing that a lot more often and trying to combine that in YouTube. I also have the show called Good or Bad, which is the concept that you made, Adam, that I actually decided to go ahead and continue on with because it's such a great show. I actually did one with you about The Last Jedi. I did one with Durban about Man of Steel. Rudy, I just met you, but if you want to and be a guest on there, you can actually you can be a part of it if you want to, man. Whatever movie you want to talk about.
All right. And then our next guest is going to be Mr. Durban, my very first interview on the podcast. Durban, how are you doing, my friend?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Where can we find you on YouTube and social media?
Well, you can find me. My channel is called Durbania, and I'm the one and only with that name. So you type that into YouTube, I'll pop right up and do movie reviews and ranking videos. I do this thing called a theological analysis. And one thing you'll constantly find on my channel is a lot of defense of Man of Steel. I'm a huge Superman fan, and so grew up on Christopher Reeve. So ultimately, he is my Superman. He just embodies that character. But I love Henry Cavill. I love Man of Steel. On Chandler's channel, defended Man of Steel. Adam, with you, I defended Man of Steel. The first video on my channel was a defense of Man of Steel. So I love all things Superman. Superman, the animated series, is absolutely fantastic. I cannot wait for that to drop on HBO Max and re-binge that whole thing afresh. And I just did a gigantic Smallville series on my channel. So I'm excited for another excuse to hop on here and talk about Superman 2, the Richard Donner Cut.
Awesome. And our next guest, he's been on a couple more times. We've reviewed The Thing. We have reviewed, we reviewed The Thing. We have reviewed the Rocky Horror Picture Show. We had it. Yeah. So, and then that is Mr. Rudy, Movie Reviews, San Antonio's official movie critic. How you doing, Rudy?
Adam, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, especially on the Superman topic. For those of you who know me, I'm a huge Superman fan. Obviously, you can see the picture I got back there, that Superman poster. That is one of my all-time favorite films. I grew up with the Christopher Reeve films. I have a Superman tattoo sleeve that I'm working on. My son's middle name is Kal-El. And I love it. And I've lost friendships defending Man of Steel. And Smallville is one of the best shows ever to take that continuity from, inspiration from the Donner films into the TV show. I love that. So I've got a ton to say, and I'm just going to stop right there before I ramble for the next 20 minutes. But thank you for having
me. All right, no problem. Well, anyway, this is going to be a fun conversation. Well, the reason why we're doing this episode, because on the podcast, guys, I've been doing this thing where I'm trying to fill in my filmography where I've never seen a film up to this point for this episode, and I've been reviewing it. So today's episode, guys, is going to be Superman 2, the Richard Donner Cut, first time watch. Yeah, like I said, never seen it, so everybody point and laugh at me. Ha, ha, ha. Anyway, guys, I'm really excited to talk about this movie with you. I believe this movie came out, I think what I was looking for is like 2006, roughly, is when it came out. Roughly?
Yep, Superman Returns year. It came out that same year.
Okay, perfect.
And
okay,
because of that movie, it was able to come out. So thanks to Superman Returns, we were able to get the Richard Donner Cut.
So I guess I'll start with first. Chandler, when do you have any memories watching the Donner Cut, and what was like your biggest takeaways after watching it for like the first time?
Well, I will be honest. The first time I saw Superman 2, was just the Lester version, not the Donner cut. The Donner cut, I didn't even know existed because I didn't even know that there were like any frustrations or fuss about Donner and then Marlon Brando behind the scenes about what was going on with that whole situation. I mean, I remember watching the first Superman or Superman 2 when I was young. It was just on television. I don't remember seeing it in theaters because that would be really long ago, and I'm not that old.
Hey,
And,
Shots fired.
But what I do remember about Superman 2 was that I remember liking that one a lot more often because it showed Superman at a more personal side and not really seeing him as just as a person who was going out and saving people because that's what he usually likes to do. It's more taking him into a personal relationship with him and Lois Lane, where Lois Lane figures out that Clark Kent and Superman are actually the same person. And I like that this movie is trying to dive into more about like Superman as a regular character, not being not going out and being Superman and just wanting to be a regular human. And what I remember as a kid when I watched that version was that it was just nostalgic. I don't really remember watching the whole movie because I remember watching movies as a kid was just watching bits and pieces of it. But watching it as an adult, as a whole, it got a lot better because there were more in-depth discussions talking about the romantic side about Superman and his relationship with Lois Lane and all the other superhero action stuff. Like I love seeing Zod and the other two villains, Nan and Ursa. I thought those three were really fun. And I love that they were just some of the greatest epic villains that don't really need like a huge epic backstory like they have with Man of Steel and all that stuff. They're just villains just to be villains because they're bad guys, and it was really fun to watch. So that's my take on it as a kid.
And how about Durban? What was your kind of like your first memory watching the Donner cut?
I watched it the year the Donner cut came out, and being the Superman fan that I am, like I grew up on those movies, like Superman 3 and 4, like. I never liked them, but I still watched them because I just like those movies. And so I always loved Superman the movie and Superman 2. Like even the Lester cut, I enjoyed it. And it's such an interesting storyline, right? And just kind of like what Chandler was saying, piggybacking off that, it's interesting because it's when Superman decides to be human and give up his powers that 3 superpowered Kryptonians arrive on Earth. So talk about, your bad timing. And so it's such an interesting movie where his history comes back to get him, but then you realize they shot these 2 movies like one movie, even though they had all kinds of issues and reshot a huge chunk of Superman 2 with Lester. It's interesting to note that Superman the movie and Superman 2 were not technically 2 different movies, that in their original intention, it was just part 1 and part 2 of the same story. And that's such an interesting thing because even in the Lester cut, you could sort of see that. And I always remembered as a kid watching the Lester cut, and things like when he's in the fortress and he's begging his dad for his powers back, and then the green thing lights up and then it cuts. I'm like, well, that sucks. How did he get his powers back? And so, like, as soon as I heard there was this thing called the Richard Donner cut, that all the stuff that Marlon Brando had filmed for that movie was released. It was released for Superman Returns, and now they were able to use it to put together the Richard Donner cut. My jaw dropped, and it was my #1 Christmas list item that Christmas, and I got it for Christmas, and I think I watched it a couple times. So it was just awesome to see just that original vision, as close to that original vision as possible, and I loved it. And to this day, it's one of my favorite things to watch the Lester cut and then watch the Donner cut. Like it's awesome to make those comparisons.
Same question to Rudy. When do you kind of recall the Donner cut release, and what's your take on it?
Well, very clearly, the Superman DVD, I believe, when it came out, the behind-the-scenes making of documentaries of Superman on that DVD are probably one of the best produced, featurettes of any DVD I've got. It's like a 3-4 part, series, and they go in depth about the Salkinds and how they were just had this vision, like in bringing, something to the screen that never been done before. And you go into the relationship and how they treated Richard Donner and how they brought Lester in. I think that's one of the first featurettes where I was learning so much about the behind the scenes, actions that took place during the filming and how, Richard Donner was treated. So I was really vested. And I was always thinking like, wow, he shot both of them. And Lester came in and made all these different, added these scenes, the scene in France and all these other things. And I was always curious what happened to that. So that was always in the back of my mind. And then when I heard that there were talks about having the Donner cut, I was excited for about a year. I could not wait to see it because, again, like Durban, I've seen 1 and 2. I grew up with them. You know, this is like my MCU when I was 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's how much I love
I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. So I love them by heart. The audio tracks, everything I knew what to look for. And when it came in, I seen Brando in part 2 really hit me like, oh my God, this is amazing. And Christopher Reeve, again, I've said this all the time. He's one of the best actors to ever have a role of a superhero, in my opinion, ever. And the scene where he's talking to his father saying, you know, I just want to be happy like everybody else in the fortress. That is some of the best acting because he's not playing Clark Kent. He's not playing Superman. He's playing Kal-El. He's playing 3 different characters. And I love how he can just pull that off. And I'm getting goosebumps right now because I'm just that conversation between him and Brando and all these other featurettes. So I loved it. I saw it 4 or 5 times. I saw it last night just to kind of remind me of what I loved. But I love that. And I to this day, it's like one of my favorite Superman films. It's aged. It's not, you know, as popular, and you know, the battle scenes are not maybe as modern as, you know, today's audiences like. But for me, it's nostalgic, and I love seeing that true vision.
Yeah, that's so awesome to hear you guys like gush about like, you know, all the memories and like what Superman really means to you. Like, for whatever reason, that was not something that was in my growing up, my space, like I kind of mentioned before.
Well, Batman was yours, right? At that age, you know, you were
perfect age, because that came out 89. What was that?
I said, so you get it because you had the same feelings with Batman, which
so that's a good point. Yeah. So my experience with the Donner cut is that I knew it existed, and I've watched Superman 2. I don't remember too much about it, but I bought this, which is a combo pack of Superman 2, the Donner cut, and Superman Returns from Amazon, and I bought it, and it was already broken. So
yeah, DVDs like that, they really suck. I had the exact same thing happen to me when I bought a Back to the Future DVD.
But yeah, what I really liked about the Donner cut, though, was that, you know, I can't really make comparisons to the other films. I don't remember the lesser cut, but I really liked the scenes with Reeve and Brando. I think that obviously 2 great actors on screen together. I thought there were some really good emotional scenes between the 2. But also, this movie made me realize how much I miss Gene Hackman. Like, man, if he was doing a movie again, like, he is kind of a fun Lex Luthor. And like I said, I've told you guys before, and this is for people who are listening now, we're doing a heroes versus villain tournament, and people have like voted. I've got votes from people, and Christopher Reeve will make the tournament. Gene Hackman's also making the tournament too. It's kind of interesting to see characters that are from a film that are pretty old, and those characters stand up to the test of time. And I think that is just because the actors who are portraying them are iconic, and they bring some, like, we're talking about Lex Luthor characters. We have some really good memories of like Hackman and I'm going to say his last name, Mike Rosenbaum from Smallville. What's his last name?
Rosenbaum.
I'd go with Rosenbaum. Yeah. He is the best Lex Luthor, though, in my opinion. Like, I love Gene Hackman. There's always that special place. But as far as live action Lex Luthors, Michael Rosenbaum, I love you, man. You got it.
Yeah, he's the best.
I've still yet to seen Smallville.
Dude, it's good.
It's the really good Arrow. It was so good right before social media, but I loved it. Like I said, I
did look up on IMDb, and I'm trying to figure out the guy's name because it's the guy that played Zod. He is actually Jor-El in that movie. In that show, isn't he?
Yeah, he does the voice of Jor-El in the show. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Alana Lang from Superman 3 is Martha Kent on Smallville. And then Christopher Reeve is in there, Dean Cain is in there, Linda Carter's in there. I mean, they paid homage. They really did.
I've seen the way that Christopher Reeve was played in a clip from Smallville. That one right there was pretty good. I thought that was actually really honorable.
They utilize him so well in that show.
Yeah.
And just to kind of share, like, my girlfriend hasn't seen Superman, the original one, so she saw 1 and 2 with me this weekend and the Donner cut last night. And again, I've seen the movie a billion times. I forgot how, to add to your point, Adam, how great Gene Hackman was. She was laughing the entire time at how witty and smart ass Gene Hackman was. And it's when you watch a movie a million times and then you see it with somebody who's never seen it and they're reacting like, oh yeah, I forgot how funny he was. Gene Hackman is underrated, and he did a great job.
Here's the odd thing for me, because the first time I did watch Superman as a whole and not just like bits by bits like I do as a kid when I saw Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, I kind of got annoyed by him. And I didn't really like him because I used to see Lex Luthor as like this intimidating, scary villain. And this guy was kind of just joking around and being, I don't know, he wasn't that intimidating to me. But when I saw him last night in the Donner cut and the Lester version, I actually enjoyed him a lot more often than I did before. So there's like,
I feel like
actually
Superman 2, both versions, the Donner cut and Lester, gets deeper into all the characters. So I agree with you, because when I watch Superman the movie, I do like Gene Hackman. I think he's funny. But what I think irritates me is how everywhere he goes, he has to announce he's a criminal mastermind. I'm like, that's stupid. If you're a criminal mastermind, you don't announce that, because you don't announce you're a criminal. So that way you can go and, be a criminal. But I like Superman 2 in both cuts, because like with Christopher Reeve and Gene Hackman, it's just deeper into their characters. So I see exactly what you're saying, Chandler. So I see that 100%.
And how does Christopher Reeve's version of Batman stand up to like the Henry Cavill's character, Brandon Routh? Like how did all these actors kind of pay homage to Christopher Reeve who have played Superman?
Can I go first on that?
Go ahead.
Okay. I think it's just the era that the characters were introduced, because the 70s, the world was a completely different place. They were using the comic books at the time, I believe the Golden Age, as the source material. So it's played funnier and lighthearted, which is not, well, in a sense, it's like that today. But Christopher Reeve went in there. He was a great actor. And I still believe him, Robert Downey Jr., and even Hugh Jackman are the best casted people. Even Wesley Snipes, I forgot him, are the best casted people for the roles, but Christopher Reeve is the best actor to play that role. He did an amazing job, and it's held up to this day. Now, Henry Cavill, I think he did a great job considering the source material entering our modern world. I mean, think about it, we can't even get along with each other nowadays. And if a Messiah God complex came down like Man of Steel or Superman, how would we treat him? And I think they played to that concept and that narrative brilliantly. I know a lot of people hated it and said he was too destructive and he destroyed Metropolis. I'm like, well, didn't you see Superman 2? I mean, if they had the technology, they would have done the same thing, and then punched one guy through the building. It's the same thing. So what are you complaining about? So it's just a modern take, again, in the world that the character is introduced to. Henry Cavill, I want a Man of Tomorrow. I want a Man of Steel 2. He's not been given proper credit. The man needs to be recognized as one of the best casted, actors out there to play roles for this character. He's done great, and I applaud him. That's all I gotta say.
Chandler, how about you?
When I pictured Christopher Reeve as Superman, I think that, a lot of what Rudy said, I definitely agree with. I think that, well, it is back in its time, there is a lot more jokiness to it. And people actually don't even like the jokes in Superman 2, to be honest. Some people thought that it was like being too silly, or they don't really like Lester's comedy. I understand what they're talking about when I watched Superman 3. That one right there was way too silly. But the jokes that were in the Lester version of Superman 2, I didn't mind that much, because I just figured it's something that's within the character traits of their characters. And it was just nice seeing these people just work off each other and just being silly a little bit within their time. And I just took it in as like, comic book stuff, like I do with Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies. I take that as just like silly cheese. And I know that some people don't necessarily get into it that much, and because of that cheese. But that's the reason why I enjoy those movies, is because of those cheese. And I felt like Christopher Reeve plays it off great. Like, for example, in the Donner cut, there's this, it's supposed to be a screen test. And Christopher Reeves is talking with Lois Lane, and she's figuring out that Clark Kent and Superman are both the same person. And Kal-El is basically still trying to be like Clark Kent and saying, like, Lois, you need to stop with these hallucinations of yours. And then Lois Lane just carries a blank gun and just points and shoots at him. And then just in an instant of a second, he just transforms himself into Superman. That's how good of an actor he was.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask the same question to Durban, but I'm going to say, how did Tom Welling from Smallville and Brandon Routh also compare to Christopher Reeve?
Well, it's funny because I'll get Brandon Routh out of the way real fast. I think Brandon Routh did a great job, but he didn't get to play his Superman. And so what I think is he did a great job carrying the torch of Christopher Reeve. So as far as what Christopher Reeve did, how Christopher Reeve played Clark Kent, how he played Superman, I think Brendan Routh did a great job. Now, he's not Christopher Reeve, and therefore there's just a certain dynamic that just wasn't present. And that's not saying he didn't do a bad job. That's just saying Christopher Reeve is Christopher Reeve, and he's unique. But Brendan Routh did an amazing job carrying that torch, I think. It's not my favorite of the Superman movies, but I am so glad, even though I didn't like the Arrowverse Crisis on Infinite Earths that much, I'm so glad he got a chance to play that role again, because I do like how he plays that. Yeah. Tom Welling is awesome. And what I love about Smallville is I think Smallville is the bridge. That portrayal of Superman is the bridge between the Donner version, quirky, funny, whatever Superman to the Henry Cavill. Because Smallville is cheesy and quirky and all that stuff, but it's also dark and gritty. Like you get like season 3 and season 6 are very dark seasons, and you get to see very dark versions of Clark. But then you see him rise right back up into the light, and then he gets pulled back down into some darkness, and you really get to see the humanity, because he's not Superman, he's not Kal-El, he's Clark Kent. So we see the development of Clark Kent becoming Superman. And, you know, not to blow anything for you, Chandler, but Clark Kent does become Superman. And when he does become Superman, it's very much a Donner version of Superman, but the journey to him becoming that Superman has a lot of elements that even Henry Cavill and Man of Steel, they picked up and put in the Henry Cavill movie. So it's like Smallville to me is a great bridge between our hokey 70s Superman to a modern day Superman. It's one of the things that I love about that show. And I think probably what I loved about it is I was a senior in high school when that show began to air. So in a very real way, it was in my formative years, like 18 till 28, 10-year run. That was a long run where that show was a part of my life. And I was stepping into the world as Clark was stepping into the world. So that really spoke to me in a totally different way than even Christopher Reeve. I love Henry Cavill. He is great. And I can only echo what Rudy said. For our time and our era, he played it just right. But what I think takes Christopher Reeve and makes him stand out is something else Rudy said. Christopher Reeve played 3 characters. He played Clark Kent. And it's not just that he could hide behind glasses and nobody could recognize him. You would never recognize that bumbling, fumbling, nasally nerd who can't even open a bottle of soda without it squirting everywhere. You would never in a million years believe he's Superman. You'd be like, you look like Superman, but you would never, ever think that that guy was Superman. Then, like you said, Chandler, like that scene where in 1 second, he straightens right up and his voice changes. He squares his shoulders. He's confident. You see Superman. But then when he's talking to Jor-El, he's Kal-El. He is a son trying to reason with his father. Like Christopher Reeve, even though he played a very specific Superman to a very specific time that really does fit best in that time, there's elements of that character that are so beyond timeless. That's why those movies, even with their quirky, cheesy 70s things, still stand out. It's because there was something incredibly unique about what Christopher Reeve brought to that character. He took it off that page and he defined it in a way that we are still just trying to capture today.
Well, okay, I just want to reemphasize your point, Chandler, real quick. That screen test footage that you're talking about, my favorite scene really of all comic books is part 1 of Superman, where Clark Kent goes into Lois's apartment. He's Clark Kent, and then she leaves the room and he takes off his glasses and just stands up straight. And he's Superman. It's like, oh my God, he totally pulls it off, and it's all body posture, how he was walking and carrying himself. And just that one scene where he just does that, I'm like, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's amazing how that right there was a screen test. That there, it's actually even more. It's what makes that scene in the movie even more awesome. Like they did that the first go around, I think.
Let's kind of throw this out there. Like other than Batman and playing Bruce Wayne, like Christian Bale, he had to play 2 characters, right? What other character out there is a challenge like to play Superman? 3 characters. I don't think there's any other characters out there, because let's just say Iron Man, he's Tony Stark in the suit in or out. But as a challenge from an actor standpoint, I don't think any other comic book role is more challenging than that. Or am I wrong?
Yeah, I agree. Because like you said, like you can't just put on a pair of glasses and think nobody's going to recognize you. Like he has to play it different. And even Smallville, like they build towards that. Like in season 10, you actually see Clark Kent in season 10 mourn the Clark Kent that grew up in the farm, because he realizes if he wants to be a hero, he's got to make Clark Kent ignorable. And if he's going to have all these powers, his face must be out there so people know they can trust him. And so he's realizing what he's got to do, and he mourns kind of what he has to do to the identity of Clark Kent.
Yes.
And even though Tom Welling did an okay job figuring that out, nobody did it like Christopher Reeve. But what it really shows, and I love Henry Cavill, but that is something that is missing in his performance. Like, his Clark Kent is not super different than his Superman. And I like Man of Steel because Clark Kent comes at the end of the movie, but that's a weird issue I have in Batman vs Superman. Like, that Clark Kent and the Superman aren't extremely different.
Yeah.
But Christopher Reeve had that nuance, and that is a challenge with playing Superman.
True. I think back to what Rudy was saying about the actually, I want to touch on Chandler before I forget the cheesy factor. I think that's it's tough because some characters and also the years film come out, we can be more accepting of cheesy kind of humor in films, like the 89/90s Batman. There's some cheesy stuff that happens in those Tim Burton films a little bit, and especially the Schumacher films. But go back to like some cheesy stuff with the Superman 1 and 2 films. You get the Spider-Man films you mentioned, but also one film that I even in my review have said that I was not prepared for the cheese was Wonder Woman, the new one, the 84.
Yep.
It was kind of, to me, it was kind of cheesy. But why was I not accepting of? Can't Wonder Woman be a little cheesy at times too? That's for me. I was just like, I don't know. I didn't like it because of that. But then I was like, that's just like a personal thing. I don't think she did a bad job, but yeah, it was a little cheesy, and that's what the movie was going for because it was the 80s.
That's why I saw it, because I know Patty Jenkins said, and even Kevin Feige has said that any movie before they start production, they show the cast Superman the original as a template. Like, this is what we want to do. I've heard of that. I don't know if that's confirmed or not, but I know Patty Jenkins has said that. And when it was set in 84, I was watching it on Christmas Day, and I was telling my kids, like, oh, they're going for the old Christopher Reeve, like Sam Raimi feel. So I caught it right away. And even I caught like rembrances of Superman 2 when she had to give up her wish. It's to be with that one guy and go save the world. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with Chris Reeve and Superman 2. He wanted to be with Lois, so he gave up his powers. He gave up something, and he had to give up something he loved to go save the world. So I saw all those those shards of mirrors.
What kind of things, if we're talking about director's cut, there's been so much talk about director's cuts, and we've seen a few really great ones. I think Donner cut actually kind of maybe elevates the material from the original version. We have Blade Runner, the final cut, which is the far superior version. We have also like films like Margaret and some other ones as well. But is there any like comparatively speaking, what makes the Donner cut kind of a little bit better in your mind? Let's start off with Durbin.
I'm gonna go with Jarrell. And it's something I touched on just for a second, where in the Lester cut, and it's not that it's horrible, but so you have Clark go through this perilous journey to return to the fortress after finding out his enemies have taken over the world. And he gets to the fortress and he's begging his father for his powers back. No response. And all of a sudden that green crystal lights up. And like I said, it just cuts. And then a little bit later, Superman shows up in Metropolis. And all you could think is, oh, okay, well, I guess that worked. And it's kind of sucks because it's like, what was the price paid for that? What was the point? Why was there ever drama in him giving up his powers if they could be reclaimed that easily? So one of the things that takes the Richard Donner cut and makes it far superior is Jarrell. And it is that scene when Clark makes that perilous journey back to the fortress and the green crystal lights up. And then you have this emotion-filled conversation between Kal-El and Jor-El. And I think what makes that powerful is how Kal-El can't even look Jor-El in the face. And Jor-El is saying, son, look at me.
I love that.
It will exhaust everything within me and end our communication. I will give you all that I have. And even though I died for you once when I was small, I mean, you hear these lines, and then you have Christopher Reeve's reactions to these lines. And, Jor-El's not really letting him talk. He's just explaining, this is now what has to happen. And so when Superman receives his powers back, it cost him something. There was a price paid for his choice to lay down his powers and to take them back. And it makes it even more emotional when he does battle with Zod in those final things, it's like he's got to win this. I mean, he's given up everything to do this, and like that emotion is what takes the Donner cut, and I think makes it superior to the Lester cut.
I'm asking the same question to Rudy, and what makes the Donner cut a little superior for you?
For my point, wow. Okay, where do I begin? Well, I'll start with the little things that I love, like the Lester cut. I remember I've seen it a billion times as a kid, right? And I remember my favorite opening sequence in superhero score. I will say this: I will battle anybody in any debate. The Superman theme is the greatest superhero theme ever.
Yes.
Which one do you choose, though? Do you choose Man of Steel or do you choose this one?
The John Williams, that's the one. I mean, the Hans Zimmer one, I think it is, for the Man of Steel. That's still great.
You're willing to admit that Man of Steel has a bad score? Are you willing to admit that Man of Steel has a bad score?
I would have picked them too. I mean, the Man of Steel flight is on my workout contract. So come on. But the tracks, John Williams that's the greatest score ever. And I love how in the Donner cut, the opening sequence started with like the opening sequence for Superman 1. That's one difference. And the 2, it says Superman, then 2 comes in. I love that. I love how, as Durbin mentioned, the Brando stuff. It hits me on an emotional level to see the guy talk to his dad. I mean, how often do we really see that in comics? I mean, I'm sure we've seen it in a few takes, but that 2 great actors going back and forth in this genre, it's beautiful to watch. And I get emotional too when he's talking to his dad, especially when he's asking, I want to be with this woman. I just want to be happy. Yeah. And then later on, I failed. I've been gone a day and I failed. It's one of those things. I also love the opening sequence where Lois knows she kind of catches on that he's Superman. That was very good and fun. I was laughing and smiling through that whole sequence. But lastly, is the relationship and footage between Superman and Margot Kidder and Lois Lane. That moment they have outside the fortress, I just love how it really hones in on their relationship. And that's what really was my big takeaway. But again, the Brando stuff, the Margot Kidder stuff, it all rang home to me.
I do love that opening scene when she's like coloring the glasses on the paper. And then she hops out the window.
Oh.
She hops out the window, and he quickly rushes down there and opens up the thing, and she falls into the fruit and vegetables or whatever. And she looks up and she's like, "Oh wow, I shouldn't have done that."
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Great. Hey Chandler, what makes the Donner cut stand out a little bit for you?
It is kind of both what Rudy and Durbin said. For me, what did tip it over the edge was, of course, like seeing Brando in the Donner cut because he wasn't in the Lester version. But I think what also makes the Donner cut more enjoyable to watch is that when you do compare it towards the Lester version, some of the transitions and logic that they have in the Lester version don't necessarily make that much sense. And when you watch the Donner cut, it makes even more sense because they do reenact some scenes from the Donner cut and then put it in the Lester version, but it makes it feel a little less like some of them are kind of being irrational or they're being more idiotic than they are being smart at it. This one right here in the Donner cut, they are doing stupid stuff like, Lois Lane just going off the window saying like, yeah, you're Superman, even though she has no freaking clue if he is. But it's more like it's kind of like, this is just like an innocent thing. We know that she's not going to die right then and there. Superman's obviously going to save her. But in the other one where Lois Lane was like, oh, I never knew that Superman, when you take off his glasses, he can basically be Superman. But there's like more logic and common sense where she can like draw it, even though he has the glasses on in the Donner cut. And it's not just that, but there's also like, I remember this one scene that distracted me. And it was when Superman just transferred his powers and decided to become immoral. And now him and Lois were driving all the way over towards this restaurant to go and get a bite to eat. During the transition, they're at the North Pole and there's snow. When they're driving down, there's like snow. But in the Lester version, it's like sunny and daylight. So shots like that, it just don't make sense. So I feel like that between those two versions, there's more common sense on how to transition from one scene to another, and also other moments where they feel like they're being innocent rather than being bumbling idiots.
Yeah.
I do got to say, in both versions, there is one thing that drives me nuts. It drives me up a wall in both versions. When Superman gives up his powers, he just killed himself and Lois. I mean, I know we cut to somehow they went to, I guess, the basement of the fortress and rented a car from Jor-El and drove on the non-existent roads when they just flew up to the North Pole. But I always wonder, how did you get out of the fortress and live? Where did you find the car rental place? And how are you driving down a road right now? Because we saw how perilous it was for him to return to the fortress. How in the world did you get you and Lois out of the fortress?
Nice.
Yeah, it's true. If I can also add, as much as I love the Donner cut, it does create a billion loopholes. Like, they don't really show what happens to Gene Hackman. You have to find it in the deleted scenes. Like, they have that square off at the end.
Right, yeah.
Out, and then he destroys the fortress. Like, what happened to Gene Hackman? Did he kill him?
I was always wondering that, yeah.
Yeah.
But in the deleted scenes, it's the corniest thing ever. The U.S. Arctic Police go to the fortress and arrest Gene Hackman and take him to jail.
Hey, there's actually something else to notify in that deleted scene. Apparently, Superman didn't kill Zod because you see Zod, Ursa, and Nun over there getting over towards the police at first, and then you would see Gene Hackman coming out of the Fortress of Solitude.
No way!
So I
never noticed that in that deleted scene.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Dang, that's awesome.
So
Yeah,
apparently,
so
apparently, Durbin, if people go ahead and say to us, well, Superman killed Zod in Superman 2, so why can't he do that in Man of Steel? Apparently, we don't have an excuse anymore.
No, we still do. Because even in Superman 2, okay, let's go best case scenario, he didn't kill Zod. He still stripped Zod of his powers. He still broke every bone in his hand when Zod was helpless, and he still hurled Zod into a solid wall, maybe breaking some ribs or his spine or something, and he left him in that hole. He didn't go sit there and help him out to the Arctic Police. So in Man of Steel, he even mourned. He had to kill his enemy, and he fell to his knees and mourned the deed that he had to do.
Yep.
As much as I don't care for Man of Steel, Durbin, I defend that scene. I will defend that scene.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Chandler's not canon, so it's a deleted scene, so it doesn't count.
There you go.
It's
not canon.
Okay, one question I want to bring up, probably one of the greatest Supermen to ever live. It's Nicolas Cage. That's Nicolas Cage. No, from Superman Lives. Question for you guys. We always do this for our deep dive. The guys on the podcast always do this for our deep dives. Who would Nicolas Cage play in this film?
Whoa.
Who would Nicolas Cage play?
I'd love to see him as a Lex Luthor. I think he'd be an amazing Lex Luthor.
Probably Otis. I could just like all the lines that are given towards Otis. I would be really curious to see how Nicolas Cage would play as that role. I mean, it could be one of the biggest Nicolas Cage performances ever.
If I could redo Superman 3, and instead of that stupid computer, be the villain it was meant to be, which is Brainiac. Give me Nicolas Cage as that Brainiac in this verse.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
And I will say this for Superman 3, as much flack as it gets, it is ahead of its time with computer hacking. What other movie in that era or before had the concept of computer hacking? No movie. That's the answer.
Have you guys seen the documentary that John Snepp did a while back called Whatever Happened to Superman Lives? Or that?
No, I've heard about this, but I've never seen it.
They actually show like Nicolas Cage in the Superman. They have interviews with like Tim Burton and stuff, and Kevin Smith, who was actually one of the original writers and stuff like that too. Very interesting documentary. But Nicolas Cage did play Superman though in Teen Titans Go to the Movies, so he did reprise his role as Superman.
And he's a big Superman fan. He named his son Kal-El.
Yeah.
And there's a scene in Valley Girl when he's running out of from the ocean on the beach. He shaved his chest hair like the Superman diamond, and he did it because he just wanted to show it off. And so he's been a big Superman fan. Before
we close out, guys, any final takes and thoughts on Superman the Donner Cut and why people should be watching it?
I think you should watch it because it's interesting to see one person's version compared to another person's version. Like, we're getting the Snyder Cut now, and I personally believe that the Snyder Cut is going to be a lot more interesting than the Donner Cut. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the Donner Cut, and I think that it really does show, like, but the real difference here is that Marlon Brando was not in it, and some logical missteps that happen in here. The Snyder Cut sounds like it's going to be a whole different movie compared to the original theatrical cut of Justice League. And that's one of the exciting things about the Donner Cut. If you're not necessarily a fan of Superman, still watch it if you are still like a movie fan, because it's so interesting to see two different versions and what they were going for and how all of this happened behind the scenes.
Good points. Yeah. Rudy, how about yourself?
Well, how can I phrase this? I think the Donner Cut really is the precursor of fans, and if fans demand something, we can get it. And because prior to that, I don't think of any other film that was driven mainly by fans wanting to see a cut. And now we have, the Justice League cut coming up. I hope one day to see the true David Ayer cut of Suicide Squad, because I love David Ayer as a director. I would love to see that. But also, this is just my wish. Like whenever superhero movies are made, we've all heard the horror stories where producers go in and change things up. They had a solid plan, visionary directors, story writers, everyone's greenlit it, and then they change it based off whims. I mean, look at Justice League. Hey, we need to make the DC universe more fun. Let's make some jokes and all this bullshit, and look how horrible it came out. Yep. So I just wish studios, if they greenlight a script and they have a visionary director, let them make the vision. I mean, look at what happened to Donner. I mean, if Donner had all the time he needed to make those two films, we could have had an epic, 2-3 films with Margot Kidder and Chris Reeve, with the patience and the respect to the material that he had. So I hope it's kind of a testimonial to let studios say, hey, you know what? They're not going to do this, but just let these visionary filmmakers make their stories, and we'll leave them alone. We'll stay away from all this, knee-jerk reaction suggestions.
Yeah. And Durbin, wrap it up.
Yeah, I'd say, especially if you're a Superman fan, you should watch the Richard Donner cut. I was watching one of the behind-the-scenes featurettes of the Richard Donner cut last night, and one of the things that you don't think about often is, you hear about all this set drama and all that stuff, but a lot of the guys who were working on the Richard Donner cut, re-editing it, finding the footage, reorganizing it, they said when they would bring this stuff up to Richard Donner and he'd take a look at it, he had an emotional reaction. Like, they didn't really go into details of what that was, but you can tell that 30 years later, there was something still raw about this. So when a director, when a writer, when an artist is invested in something, and you have Richard Donner, who had so much respect for Superman, so much respect for the material, and had so much passion for what he's doing, what they did and how they brought in Lester hurt him on so many levels. And how exciting is it that 30 years later, he got to bring his vision back? Now, think about how relevant that is right now. Like what all of us have just said, Justice League, the Snyder Cut, is not going to even be the same movie as, the theatrical cut. And it's bad because, I don't want to bash Joss Whedon for what he did for Justice League. And I don't want to, it's just because, he's a director trying to be an artist, and he was brought into a totally weird, pressurized, unfortunate situation. And it just came out horrible. And so it's like, you want to look at this and you got to think, what did that director intend? How much were they invested into it? And even Richard Donner says in that documentary, he goes, could you imagine if we did this? Like, we could have had a whole different solid set of Christopher Reeve movies. And my heart kind of just broke with that right there. So what I say is support the director's vision and check out what Richard Donner poured his heart and soul into, remembering that even though Superman 2 the Richard Donner cut ends the same way as Superman the movie, know that there was a totally different plan in place, and they took this movie and put it as close to that plan as possible.
All right, guys. Well, that's our thoughts and takes on Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut. Thank you guys so much for watching. Rudy's, Durbin's, and Chandler's YouTube channels will be in the show notes down below, so make sure you subscribe to their channels, because they have fantastic content as well. And guys, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, we will see you later.